what's that thing called? The fucking Ross Ziegler blip or something, where like
I love that shit.
Pops up.
Okay,
no, we have to talk about time travel at some point, and then we have to make sure that Ken Peters sees this, because I know how much he hates time travel.
We're also going to mention that fucking ridiculous theory that I found on Waypoint like 3 years ago, that in Fall of Reach, when Halsey, when they all go below Castle Base and Halsey finds that Forerunner crystal, I read this theory that when she touches that, she spawns 2 timelines. And
oh my god, I remember that.
Yeah, dude, can you fucking find that for me, please? Because I want to make a video on that ridiculous theory, and I've been looking for it for like a solid year now. It was like
I'll see if I can.
It spawned like 2 different timelines or something, and
yeah,
Halo 4
that's
and 5
how you got Halo
something.
Reach. And,
yeah, or like no, that was it. Sorry, it was meant to explain all the inconsistencies with Reach.
Yeah,
that was it.
And then I think people did latch onto that for Halo 4 after a while too.
Yeah,
and obviously Halo 5.
Is their excuse for being like, oh, the reason I don't like Halo 4 and 5 is because it's in a different universe.
Yeah, well, that's the excuse they used. Like, I mean, this theory has like the tiniest bit of maybe anecdotal evidence that you could say that we don't fully understand the Forerunner crystal, but that's like it. There's nothing else.
Okay, so maybe this Forerunner crystal and stuff, and how that relates to Tribe. What is it that we are talking about here? There was an example of time travel within the Halo universe. Can you explain it to the layman who is probably watching this?
Ian, you go.
There are 2 basic instances in the Halo lore. The very first that we know of happened in Halo First Strike, and essentially the instance of time travel was the survivors of the Pillar of Autumn and the Halo, the Battle of Installation 04. When they went back to Reach, they actually they left the Halo system on like September 22nd, and then they arrived at Reach on September 13th. So it's this weird relativistic sort of time travel where, at least in my mind, you could probably try to explain it away in that like time moving at different speeds and different parts of the universe and shit like that. But
yeah, the way time doesn't really act like it does here on Earth once you get in outer space and
it gets kind of crazy.
Even like that though, there's instances of time travel on Earth as well, where like you fly from, like for example, when I fly from London to Seattle, I go back in time almost.
Yeah, technically.
Well, that's
yeah. But
it's like a big ass version of that.
That's where we get stupid.
There you go.
It's that really
the sad
time
part is,
travel.
though, it seems like Halo Mythos like retconned that instance out, because they say they actually have a hard date for the crew of Pillar of Autumn returning to the Reach system as September 23rd.
I mean, I'm not...
which is essentially, it's not a full day after, it's like the day after, but not a full 24 hours after they left the Halo system. But
I'm not surprised because like I feel like time travel.
Oh yeah, because again, Ken Peters hates time travel, so he wanted to get rid of that.
Yeah, I feel like time travel is up there with multiverses in terms of like, just don't do it in sci-fi. Like just don't do a multiverse. Just don't do time travel because it gets so convoluted.
Unless you have a
and
really
messy.
good idea. But yeah, Halo's not the place to do it.
No.
Yeah, isn't it that like in First Strike, that novel that was supposed to take place after Halo Combat Evolved, in order to get from point A to point B faster, they made use of some kind of Forerunner crystal to accelerate time?
No, I'm pretty sure. I mean,
was it go back in time?
I was just going to say, I mean, this is really, really inaccurate because the last time I read Fall of Reach was probably 2005. But I'm not kidding. But I'm pretty sure wasn't the whole deal with that, like when they blew Castle Blaze up, like Halsey and Co went beneath it, and then she went one way and she found this weird crystal that she'd never seen before. And then she started fucking with
some kind of Forerunner crystal. That was essentially theorized to explain why the Pillar of Autumn survivors arrived technically, before they emerged from slipspace at Alpha Halo. And also, when they did go into slipspace, it created a lot of weird anomalies. Like, slipspace was suddenly visible, which if you've never read any of the books, you might not know, slipspace is supposed to just be black, despite how it's depicted in the games.
It's like the absence of color.
Because you're essentially going, there's nothing to see there in the visible spectrum. Yeah. But in addition to that, It's like, yeah, so it was visible, and it allowed ships to go a lot faster through slip space. It did a lot of really weird things, like when Covenant ships were firing at a UNSC ship in there, like their plasma went all over the place. And I think in a few instances, I might be wrong because it's been a while since I read First Strike, but in a few instances, it actually ended up like hitting their allies or even like backfiring back on them.
Well,
that's interesting. So it was like all their weapons were useless.
So for all you gaming nerds, basically the Covenant kept rolling ones.
I don't have a clue what that means, so I'm just going to
got that reference. Yeah. I got that reference.
I like you even more now.
And you like me even less.
Yeah, the Halo universe gets like super, super weird and stuff. I've been writing, I told you, like the script for like a video on the Didact and stuff, and how super interesting it is that like Bungie always portrayed the Forerunners as like, you know, these monastic malevolent, or not malevolent, the opposite of malevolent. The opposite of malevolent. Yeah, like just like these peaceful, like, oh, they're the Forerunners and stuff. But then when you get into the nitty gritty aspects of the lore, they actually had a super fucked up and hypocritical society.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of like seriously fucked up shit that the Forerunners did. Like,
they're like millions of years old, and somehow they still have a caste system in place.
Yeah.
And they're so fucking full of themselves that they call themselves the Forerunners.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that was one of my favorite parts of the Greg Bear novels, where it's like, oh, by the way, the Forerunners isn't just some designation by the Covenant; that's the actual species name.
Yeah, they're on such a high horse that they literally call themselves the Forerunners of everything.
It's like if we as humans renamed our species the Ancients.
Yeah, the great ones.
Yeah, because like we know that we'll die eventually, and we want to be called something awesome when future aliens discover us.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, but the Greg Bear novel was revealed like a ton of fucked up shit that went on in the background. Like, I addressed it in a recent video, but like the Palace of Pain, or Palaces of Pain, all the
Palace of Pain.
Yeah, have you not heard about
this?
It's
from Primordial.
Yeah, it's from Primordial. I think it's Chakass and Gamelpar see a bunch of people being wheeled into one of them by the Primordial. Yeah, it's fucked up. Basically, you know the field research facilities that we go to in like Halo 1 and Halo 2?
Okay.
They were essentially like experimentation zones that a guy called Faber, who was like he was the master builder. When he essentially got corrupted by the Primordial, along with Mendicant Bias, he used these places to essentially try and find a flood cure on humans, but there wasn't a cure, and essentially all he was doing was torturing them to try and rip out the Gaesh that the librarian put into them, because he thought that would provide some sort of cure, because she gave it to them specifically, but all it ended up being was just this like really fucked up place that there were loads of conspiracy theories about, and loads of like rumors about like people go there and they don't come back, or the ones that come back are changed forever. Like, it's like seriously fucked up shit. It's like when people say
call it the Palace of Pain.
Even weirder.
That's what the humans call it.
That's what humans call it. It goes even deeper than that. I just want to point out, he wasn't like ripping out the Geish. Technically, he was ripping out the ancient human memories that the Geish contain.
Oh yeah, shit.
But then it's like, we
should probably clarify really what a Geish is.
Oh yeah, for anyone who isn't familiar, Geish, or Gai as it's pronounced in Halo CE or CEA, I'm sorry, is essentially like it can encompass a lot of things. It's like something stored in the DNA
that compels a species to work towards an eventual goal.
It's like programming.
Yeah,
it's
like
a programming.
Memories. Yeah, it's like a programming. It even just contains memories of ancestors. It can do a lot of interesting things. It's essentially, if you remember Halo 4, when the librarian advances the Chief's evolution, and God, don't get me started on how much I hate that particular wording, but that is essentially the unlocking of a Gai, or a gene song.
It's like catalyzing it, basically.
Isn't the idea supposed to be that the Forerunners, or like the librarian specifically, she implanted a gene song within the human species to eventually work towards the creation of Spartans?
Well, it's not just Spartans though. It's sort of like to guide them through evolution, isn't it? If I'm remembering correctly, it's like
to ensure that we don't end up like just like whatever monkeys that are like level 38 on the food chain.
Well, sort of. It's more accurate. It would be more accurate to say it was supposed to guide us back to what we were. So like,
okay,
go diving into the deep lore for anyone not familiar.
Human shit.
Here we go.
Humans were once a spacefaring species millions of years ago, right alongside the Forerunners. They were almost on par with the Forerunners in a lot of ways. Not so much, but not quite though. So
without being hypocritical monsters.
I mean, to be fair, they put up a decent fight against them, all things
considering. It's like the humans like, hey, you guys are assholes. At least we admit we're assholes. But then there was the human Forerunner flood, or the human Forerunner war. I mean, the flood war involved.
Technically, it was the human Forerunner flood war.
Yeah, well, you want to get all the players in there. The human Sanshayum Forerunner Flood War. There you go. But no, it's officially called the Human Forerunner War, and humanity lost. And when they did, the Forerunners were like, "We're going to devolve you back into more primitive forms." Yep, basically.
Yeah, back to the
Stone Age. Technically, humans are always monkeys, but
for losing this war is now you're set back 5 billion years on the evolution scale.
Yeah, pretty much. And so the Geish. I keep wanting to say Gai because of CEA, but it's supposed to be Geish.
We could probably say Gene Song to make it easier.
Yeah, okay, the Gene Song. Let's go with Gene Song. So the Gene Song implanted in humanity was essentially, among other things, supposed to guide them back to that former glory.
It was a cheat code.
A little bit, but at the same time, people still have to achieve that on their own.
Yeah, it's not just given to you.
It's like saying
do it.
It's compulsion.
Yeah.
More so than like an actual here, now you are spacefaring. Goodbye.
Which by the way, this completely vindicates Halsey. She had no control over herself. It was all the Gene Song's fault.
Kilo 5 BTFO'd.
She subconsciously wanted to abduct children.
It's all the librarian's fault.
Something interesting when you mentioned the Sanshayum, who are the prophets, before the firing of the Halo rings and the flood invasion of the Milky Way galaxy and the extinction of the Forerunner species, the prophets were considered like the most beautiful species in the entire Milky Way galaxy, right?
The most beautiful, the most sensual,
which is so weird to think about.
Almost universally attractive, except, funny enough, by humans and Forerunners. It's like everyone else is like, this is the hottest shit ever, and they're like, wow, you guys are weird.
I mean, they look nigh on like identical to how they look in Halo 2 and Halo 3. They just weren't like all curled up in chairs. They were stood up quite tall. They fought with like big staffs and shit. They were cool as hell.
Because isn't the idea that the prophets that we know them as now, that's like so many decades of inbreeding and like weird shit as compared to the previous version of them pre-firing of the Halo rings?
That is definitely a part of it, but even in I think it's actually Cryptum, we see that their civilization after the defeat of them and the humans by the Forerunners, their civilization radically changed, focusing less on this aesthetic and beauty and sensuality and more on age and wisdom and shit.
Yeah, well, there's
and then of course that just
they got full of themselves.
Yeah, pretty much. And then that just got worse and worse as the eons went on. And then of course, once like 1,000 of them ran away from their home planet and realized, oh shit, 1,000 of us is not really enough to keep the species going.
Again, fucking their sisters.
Well, there's that bit where like Bornsteller and Dad go back to, I've completely forgotten the name of the planet.
Janjaquam,
that's it. And it's just like desolate. It's quite a weird like picture. It's just desolate.
So to be fair, the bastard builder had, well, actually no, the librarian had just been there. Then they find it desolate.
Again, it's been like fucking 2 years since I read them.
It's like this weird series of events where like they got there just after the librarian had collected some samples. Then a civil war broke out. The master builder came in and it's like, okay, I don't want to deal with this. I'm just going to hit you with a halo.
Yeah, it's not long after they get picked up by the Dalek ship, is it? And they start like getting more space.
And then they get back. Yeah, and then a few of them get saved because like they might know the cure to the flood.
Yeah,
and shit.
Oh, this is bullshit.
Oh my god,
this all sounds really crazy to people that are listening and haven't read the Forerunner trilogy. This sounds fucking batshit insane, but I can promise you that it all makes.
But it does all make sense though.
Yeah, it makes coherent sense when you read it all together. If you read it all together, it makes coherent sense.
For the fifth time. Look, here's the thing. I love Greg Bear. I love the Forerunner books, but he has some high sci-fi concepts in there that can really go right over your head.
Some of the descriptions of the
that's going to work for some people. It works for me. It works a lot for Haruspis, but it might not work for everyone.
Man, the Forerunner trilogy, I'm currently on my second rereading of it, and it's still like I'm picking up stuff I didn't notice before.
Right?
Because it is deep. It is like 1970s, like pre-Alien, where it's like the simplification of the sci-fi concept. Like when just science fiction was super weird.
It really is the Silmarillion of Halo. It's Halo's Silmarillion.
There you go. It even has a glossary.
Oh shit, it does, doesn't
it? Okay, so like the flood, I mean, obviously a lot of people understand that the idea is that the flood come from are kind of almost like the bastard, like semi-evolution of an ancient race of aliens that seeded the Milky Way galaxy and stuff. And I mean, there's the Mantle of Responsibility, you know, and all that, and how the flood are almost like a corrupted manifestation of how fucked up the mantle is as a concept. What is the Mantle of Responsibility?
Okay, I'll take this one. I mean, a simplified version of this is essentially it's like a implicit thing given to a species who are deemed strong enough and also responsible enough to sort of act like, and pardon the pun, the guardians of the galaxy. Essentially, the role of the mantle is that the people that the species
like Star-Lord.
that have it,
Yes.
Yeah, bang on, precisely. There you go.
Okay.
But no, the point is basically the species that have it are meant to look after the galaxy and essentially ensure that no major species goes extinct, that type of thing. Ensure safety.
Ensure that they all reach the same level of technology, where it's
not necessarily the same level of tech. Not necessarily.
It's really not that clear. Yeah, it's not that clear. Like they're supposed to watch over life, but in what regard isn't all that clear. Like
it's too vague.
Are they supposed to be hyper what would you call that? Intervention, like hyper interventionary, like the Forerunners were.
Well, I mean,
or are they just supposed to make sure that that the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy doesn't spew out gamma waves and wipe everything off the planet and off the face of the galaxy? You know, it's the role is really vague and. It got so corrupted by the Forerunners because they basically they took it
selfish
and said,
dickheads.
Yeah, literally. Like if you want deep lore again, the Forerunners got tested by the Precursors. The Precursors said, "No, sorry, you fucked up. We're gonna move on to someone else." And the Forerunners rose up and killed the Precursors.
It wasn't even like that, if I remember correctly. They just outright said that, nah, humanity are the ones that are going to have it. We chose humanity over you. Fuck off.
Well, no, basically. They didn't. They said that humanity would be tested next, but not that humanity would get it. So
it's pretty implied that humanity wouldn't get it though, because who else was there? There's essentially that's pretty much it.
Because we're humans. Why wouldn't we get it?
Exactly.
How is, since you guys are Halo lore experts and stuff, something that kind of like confused me was that the idea that the Precursors are supposed to be as close to godhood as a physical being can get in regards to its technology, to the point where the Precursors could like move planets, create life. Like,
well, the whole point of the Precursors is that you don't understand them. Like, the whole point of them is that they don't make sense. That's why they're so
they're so advanced that they're almost gods. How was it that the Forerunners, in response to being told, sorry, like, you're not going to be the guardians of the Milky Way galaxy, like, we're going to test humans next to see if they're qualified, like, how were the Forerunners able to basically kill spirituality itself? Like, I
mean, we don't know. We actually know very, very, very little about the Forerunner Precursor War. Like, we know next to nothing about it. It's just anecdotal stuff that came from I can't remember who says it. It was in Cryptum, wasn't it?
You get a little bit from the Primordial. You get a bit from some Forerunners that were on what became Installation 07 during Halo Primordium.
It was
I actually have a few ideas about exactly how that happened.
Okay.
The first is that I think when people compare them to gods, they, especially just because Halo is more prominent, is created in the West, so I think a lot of the discussion about what it could mean to be a god is basically becomes a comparison to the Judeo-Christian God, the all-powerful.
Like an omnipresent
Whereas
God.
I like to think the Precursors are probably more akin to the Greek or any of the old polytheistic gods. I had another few in my head, but I can't remember.
I hadn't thought of it that
that's
way.
like the kind of gods where they are very flawed. They are very, for lack of a better word, human. And very much susceptible to death.
Bro, I'm not even kidding, right? Have you guys seen the Jason and the Argonauts from like the 60s?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So you know the scene is like in the heavens, in that, where like they're all in the Parthenon, or the gods are in the Parthenon, they're all like watching the actions of Jason and stuff. That type of thing is kind of how I always imagine the Precursors. Like they're on some like different plane of existence, and they're sort of just like watching what they've made and seeing how shit like develops and how shit like changes. That's it's weird that you said that, because that's always how I imagined it.
Yeah, and the other thing is just that the Forerunners got lucky and dealt a decisive first blow against them.
And the Precursors had no fucking idea it was going to happen either. Like, it was so out of the blue. It's
and
like
then there's even this implication in Silentium, I think it was, that the Precursors actually let it happen because they were just so fascinated with how violent the Forerunners suddenly got. It's like, whoa, never seen this.
It's akin to anybody in the UK like randomly waking up and realizing that America's just nuked us. Like, it was kind of like on par with that level of surprise. Like, they just didn't see it happening at all.
Well, that's interesting to suggest that it's almost like they're so advanced that like individuality and mortality is beyond them, that they're like, we're being driven to extinction. This is like interesting.
Well, I mean, individuality wasn't really a thing anyway, because they could shapeshift and like they could represent themselves in like any form they wanted. Like the way that I think about the Precursors is, think of something fucking batshit crazy, times it by 10, and I guarantee the Precursors could do it, because like there's no inhibitions to the Precursors. They can do anything.
It's implied that the Precursors are older than our universe itself. So nothing is off the table.
Yeah, that's why it's so cool, and that's why it always annoys when people say, "Oh, how sick would it be if we fought a Precursor in Halo 6?" It's like, no, that's not the way it works.
Dude, I don't want to see the Precursors come back because that's just too much.
The only way they should ever do it is they should do some like Halo 3S terminals where like there are a few like messages left by the Primordial or something on the Ark, or if we do go to Installation 07, maybe there's some left on there or something from when it was captured.
Or maybe you could interact with like a Precursor AI.
Like
give you
a Baden or something.
Yeah,
because like the Precursors, they seem like a lot, which I think is like very fun. I love Lovecraftian horror and stuff. They very much seem that shapeless, formless being that is so beyond what you can comprehend, and it's so far removed from what you understand of reality that it's like they're like by the time they blink, an entire millennium has gone by.
Yep.
Yeah, it's basically think of like the craziest thing, and they can do that. Like they don't have any limits.
The Precursors, I guess, like the idea in the lore is how they eventually became the Flood was that in response to the Forerunner backlash to their decision to, like move on to humans, was they hid themselves in like the form of like a weird dust. Yeah. And then over time, that dust became corrupted. It's like to a malevolent, or the opposite of malevolent. So we're back at this point.
Benevolent is the opposite of malevolent.
Benevolent.
Think benign.
Oh, benign. Okay, yeah, no, I'm drunk. I
couldn't tell.
Typical fucking Russian.
To the Forerunner. How was it that like these beings that almost live eternally, they don't have a concept of death? Like, how do they forget to not be a space zombie?
Because as soon as they...
Because
there's a lot of things that go into that. For one, there's like this weird degradation, but also then when like the humans and Sanshayun found it, they decided to feed it to their dogs.
I like that logic of like, oh, we found this like primordial weird dust that we don't know where it comes from. I guess give it to our pets.
Well, yeah, because initially it gave them like positive effects and shit. And then
it's like, hey, it makes them more docile. Should we look into this?
Nah, just keep giving it. And then all of a sudden they started like sprouting tentacles and shit. And it's like, oh, whoops.
And it jumped to humans, and then it turned into a whole issue.
Well, it's actually funny. There's like a whole thing where it's like it jumped from the Pharaoh. Those are the dogs, essentially. It jumped from the Pharaoh to the Sanshayum and the humans, but not from Sanshayum to human. And like there was like some other weird shit. Like they got into some really weird detail about how the early flood spread. So like it would jump certain ways, but not others.
The original
it jumped
zombie
up
outbreak.
the food chain.
Yeah.
The OG zombie outbreak.
Oh yeah, and by the way, the reason it's for anyone who hasn't read this, the reason it went from the Feru I'll go simple terms. The reason it went from the dogs to the prophets and humans is because apparently some of the ancient prophets and humans actually ate the dog species. So.
And then they ate the foot of supercell, and that was how it.
Yeah,
did the big spread.
I can make such a racist joke right there, but I won't.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Okay.
Yeah, let's.
I was going to say I've had this quite a sort of weird thought about the whole dust situation. I was writing a video about it a few weeks ago, and it sort of hit me like, does the dust that the precursors grind themselves down into always corrupt over time? Or did something happen to because isn't there that thing with the ship? There's like a load of vials in a ship, and it starts drifting into the
Milky Way.
Into the Milky Way, and then they take this stuff like out of the vials. I've just always thought like, I wonder if the precursors always go corrupt and therefore are like destined to turn into the Flood, or if that select like number of vials just happen to go corrupt. Like, it's an interesting thought.
It's possible. I mean, it's actually somewhat implied that the Primordial was a created Gravemind.
Yeah, it was like a hybrid of the last precursor and the Gravemind. Yeah,
so it was created, and there's almost an implication that it was created as a Gravemind or a proto-Gravemind. Not in the same way, the same kind of proto-Gravemind, but like a prototype Gravemind.
Yeah, we should probably clarify that when we refer to the Primordial, it was like the first documented case of a being that had control over the Flood.
Yep.
And it claimed it was the last precursor, and it was referred to as the Primordial.
Yeah, but it lied quite a lot, though. Like, it didn't necessarily lie a lot.
It was full of shit.
It didn't necessarily lie a lot. It's just there's no like actual evidence to back up its claims. Like, it could have just been lying.
I like to think that that everything it said was the truth.
Oh,
but
yeah,
like,
same.
have you ever heard of old like fairy lore? Like old Irish fairy lore?
No.
Because essentially, like they could never tell they could never tell a lie. But that doesn't mean that the truth they told you was like what you wanted or was going to be helpful to you.
Yeah.
There were ways to bend the truth
around the question.
They could still deceive you even if they couldn't lie to you.
Well,
that's why I like to think the Primordial statements where he was being deceptive but still honest in this weird, corrupted, twisted way.
I liked the idea that, like, at least in the ancient, like, pre-Halo firing humans and stuff, the idea was, like, any human that had direct conversation with this Primordial that they found in the Milky Way galaxy, it was never specific about what it said to them, but it was so powerful, apparently, that, like, the humans were just like, fuck it, I guess I'll just kill myself.
I mean, what they were told, like, I mean, at least what we know was told to some of them at one time was that it was like they were told the true origins of the Flood and what happened to the people who were infected and, like, how powerful the Flood were. And they were literally just like, yeah, fuck this dude, I'm out. I'm dipping.
Peace out.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty cool that one being can just do that with its words.
Yep.
Well, and the idea, I guess, is also like, you know, whenever people drop the concept of the logic plague, that's almost like, yeah, the great.
Tasty.
I know, Luke, you're a big fan of the logic plague, and that's like
celebrating.
Yeah, because I mean, you guys are lore nerds. Maybe you can break it down for the layman.
Okay, so the logic plague is essentially how the Flood infect AIs and computers.
At a very high level, yeah.
Because you can't make a computer zombie. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it doesn't turn it into a zombie. It turns it sort of onto the side of the Flood in super basic terms. It can also be used on humans as well. In videos, I always refer to it as like. Yeah, no, it's not like an actual like a parasite or anything like that. It's
not a literal plague.
Yeah, the way that I always describe it is
it's a plague because it can literally spread like that.
Yeah,
but it's not like a computer virus. It's a philosophy.
Yeah, essentially, it's like a red pill.
I just wanted to say that
it's essentially a red pill. Like that's how I always describe it in videos. It's a philosophical red pill.
Yeah, that's not far off base. Anyway, continue, please.
As I was going to say, you just mentioned that it can be transferred like a plague. I swear to God, like 3 years ago or something, I read somewhere that at a certain stage in the Flood's development, like through their evolution, combat forms can transmit it, and I've not been able to find that.
Forms.
Yeah, I've not been able to find that since. and I cannot remember for the life of me where I found that.
I wouldn't be surprised if that were true. Because there was a lot of craziness going on in the final years of the Forerunner flood war.
Well, yeah, with the amount of keyboards formed and shit.
Wasn't like the flood were at such a stage of infection across the Milky Way galaxy that reality started to become corrupted by the mere presence of the flood? Like physics were being turned against all living beings.
I mean, there was definitely like some like there were instances where the flood like had these crazy esoteric powers. Like there's one instance, if you read the lore behind Tyrant from Halo 5, it talks about how at one point the Gravemind reached into like reality itself and bent it to its will to break down these very tough Forerunner defenses.
That's
like,
neural physics.
Okay, I'm gonna stop throwing things at you. I'm just gonna break reality for a couple seconds.
Well, it reminds me of when they took Star Road to the Greater Arc. Star Road, is long story short, are like these massive precursors, sort of like, they're not towers, they're like these constructs that they could use to cross space really fast. There's this part,
it connected planets, it connected systems.
Basically. But think of them as big roads in space, essentially. But there's this bit in what is it? End of Primordial, I think. I can't remember when, but it's when the fight at the Greater Arc's going on, and a Star Road literally just gets fucking swung into the Greater Arc like a baseball bat, and it just snaps it. Like it uses like a big baseball bat, and it just fucking breaks the Greater Arc.
I remember that like, because the Forerunners came to be almost dependent on the leftover technology of the Precursors, and then it's like, oh, because the Flood have these, intimate ties to the Precursors, they could use this technology against the Forerunners, almost like the Reapers from Mass Effect.
Well, not entirely. The Forerunners can never quite get, they can never get the Precursor tech to work for them. They can never turn it on, but it was always so persistent.
Yeah.
Like, this stuff could be deducted under, like, tectonic plates. I think that's the correct term, at least.
And as well,
it would still emerge millions of years later, virtually untouched.
And without, knowing how to...
Subducted, that was the word.
Yeah, and without knowing how to sort of, use it and manipulate it as well, they could still make use of it, like Abaddon. Like, Abaddon and the Domain. Yeah. The Domain isn't a Forerunner thing, that's a Precursor thing. Like... Even that's not clear that it's a precursor thing. It might just be something before that, or something that just exists.
Yeah, let's not get into that.
That's a bit too deep, even for this. But no, the whole thing, like the domain.
Lore podcast part 2. What the fuck is the domain?
Part 2. We've gone so deep we can't even think for ourselves anymore. But no, the domain, that's a precursor construct, and it's like essentially managed
Allegedly.
by a precursor AI called Abaddon. But the Foreigners didn't know how to manipulate it or use it. They just made use of it, if that makes sense. Yep. It's all really fucking confusing. Like, none of it actually makes sense. That's the point of it.
It's like if transit buses and stuff just always existed on Earth and we didn't know how they existed or why, but we made use of them.
B-boys. Imagine if that was real.
Imagine it's funny because it's basically like if the internet was always around, but you had no idea where it came from. And you also can't look up anything you don't know. You have to have some kind of basis for whatever knowledge you're looking up.
Yeah, that's one of the big misconceptions about the domain. Like, it is very, very similar in its most basic term to the internet, but it's not like you can just search up how to cure the flood and watch read the fucking
the domain
wiki
probably knew that.
Yeah, well,
domain.wiki how to cure flood infection.
Yeah, well, that's the domain could very likely be like an infinite source of information. You could get anything you want, but there's no fucking wiki how to cure the flood. Step 1, break an infection form.
Isn't the domain just like you going through the memories of past members of your own society and species?
It's essentially like a repository of all the memories and databases of everything that existed.
Okay, gotcha.
I think that
all information. Like I was talking about earlier, the precursors are implied to be older than the universe. That's because they say in, I believe it was Silentium again, that in the Milky Way that the domain had 100 billion years of knowledge in it.
Ooh.
It's quite a long time.
But you can't access that if you don't have some, it's really weird how it works. You have to have some notion of what you're looking for in order to find it.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual thing.
Yeah, it kind of is.
What you were looking for was inside you all along.
Honestly, I think it's actually it reminds me a lot of oh god, I can't remember. It's like this. I think it's this old. I think it's a Hindu concept, but this like astral library that's supposed to exist. And I might be wrong about where it's from.
That rings a bell.
I can't remember the name. Yeah, for the life of me, I can't remember, and right now, and it's pissing me off. But
I mean, the concept
I think it began with an A.
The precursor concept of living time, that's also like a philosophical thing as well. I forgot who made it.
Ties into the Mantle too.
Yeah.
I'm super glad you mentioned living time, Luke, because I was going to ask you two, the biggest lore experts that I know. So this is even something that I don't truly understand right now. What is?
No one does, trust me.
Yeah,
okay. That's very reassuring.
Were you going to ask
what is living time?
Essentially, the idea.
Okay, so it's literally a giant
living.
clock that's alive.
It's a giant clock with legs and a head. But no, like
essentially,
I think if I remember correctly, the
have
idea is that...
Have you ever seen "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared"?
No,
it's that.
I'm just thinking of the fucking chest from Dark Souls. One of those, but a clock.
Oh god.
But yeah, anyways, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, the whole idea of living time is that essentially everything is living, like, or at least everything the precursors made is living. So like the star roads, even though they're like inanimate objects, they are
even the universe itself
living.
Is alive in a way.
Yeah, the universe.
Okay.
The universe.
It's like a gigantic organism.
Yeah, everything's a
kinda.
gigantic organism, and it also like ties into this philosophy of the Mantle that nothing is permanent, that everything will be passed on eventually.
Yeah,
and ties into why the Forerunners called themselves the Forerunners, getting back, swinging all the way back around. It's
because they knew they were just a part of the bigger plan.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it, man.
And we want a cool ass name.
Yeah, that was like a
so what about us humans? You shall be the Reclaimers.
Yeah, and then what about
the
elites?
Reclaimers?
You'll be called the elites. But
okay.
Yeah, right. Anyways, they were given a normal name.
That is, yeah, and so something now that's kind of something that I wanted to ask you specifically, Ian. Because you're obviously an expert on this and you're a big fan of it within the Halo canon. Can you give us the canon behind the target designator from Halo Reach?
Fucking hell.
Yeah, okay, so let me tell you all about the journey of the target designator. It actually ties into Hamish Beamish's backstory a bit. And, I can't keep going.
I mean, that was actually going to be okay. Like, I was more so going to bring up a lot of. So obviously, like, I've read the Fall of Reach book. I understand, the lore, contradictions and stuff between the game and the book. But obviously, like the person who doesn't feel like reading the book, like, why is Halo Reach hated so much?
Well, basically, it was a giant middle finger to a beloved story, and I wish I was exaggerating about that. But essentially, Bungie, for their final game, said, "Hey, we want to tell a story about Reach." They saw, oh wait, somebody already did that. Well, fuck that. We're gonna do what we want to do, and to a degree, I get it, but I wish they had made a better effort to try and.
It's not like it's a completely irreparable thing, though. Like, there's nothing.
Truly, it is, because Reach was meant as a retcon for Halo: The Fall of Reach. It still makes references to certain events.
Yeah.
But like, I'm almost certain that fleet that you see at the end of Long Night of Solace as Noble Six is falling to Reach. I'm almost certain that's supposed to be the fleet of Particular Justice.
I was just going to say, I thought it was. I thought that was Thales fleet.
Yeah. But officially, that can't be the case because they don't show up till August 30th. So,
what is it specifically like? So let's say we take like a Joe off the street who's like, yeah, I fucking loved Halo Reach. That was the best campaign in the series. And he doesn't get why people who read the books don't like Halo Reach. If you were to sat down and explain to him, this is what happened in the book, The Fall of Reach, and then 10 years later, this is what happened in Halo Reach, the game, that basically contradicted what I know from this book.
Sorry, what's the question?
What if you were to explain what it is exactly, the details, the contradictions?
So, essentially, Fall of Reach. Halo. I think this is the best way to put it. In Halo: The Fall of Reach from 2001, Reach is basically felled in about 3 hours. Covenant show up around 0500 on August 30th. By 0800, the planet is basically lost. Which really speaks to the power.
What a fucking morning.
Yeah. It's not even 8 a.m.
Yeah, like the emergency alert on your iPhone, like alien invasion.
Yeah. You know what? I want to bet that I would hope that by like maybe 25-30 at the latest, there had been like some kind of alien invasion app on Chatters.
Like keeping track of Covenant patrols in the Milky Way galaxy.
I bet.
There's an open source out there everyone can contribute to from across the galaxy. Like, New Harmony.
It's like if you want to extrapolate what people do today with this shit to the 25th century, it's fun. Anyway, so Fall of Reach. The planet falls in 3 hours. Halo Reach. The Covenant secretly invades starting on July 26th. The planet still falls on August 30th, but you have like a month-long campaign against them somehow. And also, that's kept secret from a lot of people somehow. So
it's like, actually secretly this invasion was like months and months.
Yeah. Well, weeks and weeks, but still, it's like anything beyond a few days is kind of like you're stretching my suspension of disbelief.
And then Master Chief and his buddy pals, Blue Team, like they even took part in kind of trying to defend the planet.
Yeah. Well, Red Team mostly. So the majority of Spartans that had been gathered there for Red Flag prior for this special operation prior to the Covenant showing up. But like 22 of them, there were 25 brought to Reach. 22 of them went down to the planet to defend it. And then Blue Team, which in this case consisted of John, Linda, and James 005, almost said 055, went on a separate mission to erase some nav data to uphold the Cold Protocol. And fun fact, that is where the Chief meets Sergeant Johnson.
Okay.
Yep.
He knows what the ladies like. Okay.
Yes. Yep. And he knew that Linda did not like to get hit with with like 10 plasma pistol shots in the back of the head.
Okay. That's super interesting.
Yeah, that's basically how Fall of Reach ends. Linda gets shot with like 10 overcharged plasma pistol shots. She's basically dead. Chief drags her back to the Autumn and
that's
like
why
screaming at NCOs like, get her in cryo now.
That's why on Combat Evolved Anniversary there's a cool little Easter egg where I think it is on the Pillar of Autumn when you go to the room that technician Sam's in, you can see one of the cryo tubes that says Linda on it.
That's cool.
Dead.
Doesn't she get like dispersed out into space or something? So she doesn't get.
Yeah, she gets the cryopods in general. Like, there's a safety protocol that when the Autumn was going to go down, they ejected the cryopods so they could be recovered later.
Yeah,
that's super cool. Yeah,
so technically Linda's floating around this Legendary 4 somewhere.
Yeah, because the idea that, like, I guess a lot of people seem to kind of forget was that, like, wasn't Reach supposed to almost be like, I mean, if you take your mind back to like the early 2000s when the Halo franchise was just getting going, Reach was almost like the last line of defense for humanity. It was like humanity was quite literally about to become extinct if the Covenant found Earth.
Yeah, or at least they'd be in a position where they wouldn't be able to fight back in any sort of effective manner. So Reach was like this last bastion of defense before Earth. It's 10 light years away, like 10 and a half light years, 11 light years away from Earth. It's basically on Earth's doorstep. And if the Covenant found that, Earth is almost inevitably going to follow.
I mean, to be fair, the game still upholds that.
Yes, it does. It upholds the core, but it shits all over some of the other parts of the books that people enjoyed.
Do you think Bungie did that intentionally? Because I do know.
Well, yeah, they did.
Okay.
They like I was saying, Halo Reach was a retcon, but it wasn't like this.
I mean,
I don't want to say it was.
maliciously.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think it was malicious. It was more. This is our franchise. We don't really care. We don't really want to be restricted by what somebody else outside of our studio did.
I mean, whether you like it or not, you can understand the thought process.
Yeah, I understand it. I can even sympathize and appreciate that to a degree. Like, if you create this thing, you don't want other people touching it. Generally speaking,
Yeah.
it's a point of content. Like, you can look at Alan Moore
George Lucas.
with any of the properties look at George Lucas, look at Alan Moore with anything he's made. He's like basically sworn off like any sort of adaptation of any of his work at this point because he doesn't like the idea of people doing anything with his works, and that applies to a lot of people. So I get it, but so and in that regard, I don't think that what they did was malicious, but obviously I still can't agree with what they did.
What do you think about, so this is like an interesting question, and I mean, definitely if you guys want to do this again, like kind of like a lore episode,
I'm down
to further talk. You know, people can ask questions about the lore that you experts.
Yeah, that'd be the best.
That'd be quite fun. That'd be fun.
I'm thinking of sort of like Star Trek. The theme of, you know, Star Trek's universe and stuff is like humanity all unified and working together and stuff and exploring the great unknown. Like, what do you think is, if you were to take the entire Halo universe and the franchise and stuff, what do you think the theme of the Halo universe is?
How humanity overcomes extreme pressure and extreme danger, and how they always come out on top despite loss.
Okay.
Pretty much, yeah. That's at the core of the majority of fiction, be it the games or the books or comics.
And if you look at it in like a grand picture as well, the like super early stuff like Forerunner Flood War, that even kind of resembles that, because during the whole like human Forerunners War, Precursor War, all that stuff, the one species to come out of that on top technically are humans, even though they get reset.
Yep.
Technically.
Okay, because I was gonna say it felt almost like it was this constant like overhead battle of like the Milky Way galaxy is almost doomed to a constant cycle of conflict because a bunch of fucking hypocritical aliens can't relinquish control of the Milky Way galaxy.
You wouldn't be wrong.
That they think they're owed just because of the fact that they exist.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, between 2552-3 and 2557-ish, there was like, I mean, there wasn't peace, but there was like the closest thing that we're going to get to peace in the galaxy, at least.
Yeah.
Like, and that was when humans were on top. That's when humanity was on top.
That was when humans were the badass. I mean, Arbiter's over there on his own planet, like,
just fucking shit up with the different clans and shit, like doing his stuff.
yeah. What do you think is going to happen? Because, like, obviously for brand recognition, the Covenant in name will have to stick around.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen in Halo 6 with the Covenant? Do you think it's still going to be the Covenant?
It's got to be. Like, lore aside, it has to be.
I'm not entirely sure. Like, maybe they'll still use the name, but I'm really hoping that they'll shake things up just a little bit. Like, I don't want it to be just elites and humans versus essentially the Covenant, what is now like it was in Halo 5, basically in Halo 5, the Sun Helios levels. Much as I love those, I would love to see some new species come in. I want to see certain species on Cortana's side, and I want to see like the elites and jackals specifically on humanity's side, and maybe the hunters are divided between which have their loyalties divided.
Take Bungie's idea from Halo 3 that they were going to do. Yeah, I want to see the Sharkoi as well. We know the Canon now, thanks to...
Oh my god, dude.
Was it Envoy?
I need them.
I think, was it Envoy? Envoy. Envoy confirmed
both are
the
valid
Canon.
pronunciations.
Yeah, well,
It's really interesting. I've been playing through Marathon lately because I've been trying to...
Oh, yes.
Marathon, obviously, like, gameplay-wise, some elements have aged poorly, while some have aged incredibly well, but, like, it's really interesting after playing through Marathon and kind of almost seeing Bungie's fascination with AI losing it and almost, like, trying to pursue becoming their own species as well as godhood and stuff. It's warmed me up a little bit to the idea of the evil robot takeover.
I mean,
if it can be done right,
it's not.
It's off to a very rocky start, but if it can be done right, I'm excited for it. Like, I talked about this a long time ago. Sorry to interrupt you, Luke.
Yeah, fun. Carry on.
I'll let you finish. But
full of fucking Kanye.
Like the idea that like the first thing that popped out to me after finishing Halo 5 is this is the freaking Cortana letters. And for anyone who doesn't know, the Cortana letters were a series of letters. You can find these on Halopedia or Halo Nation. They were this series of letters sent to
they were in marathon games.
Marathon.
They were within marathon games.
They were emails sent to a marathon fan site. I want to say it was the same site, Bungie.org, who hosts right now Destiny.Bungie.org, Halo.Bungie.org, so on and so forth. I might be wrong, but they sent these letters out to kind of like early viral marketing for Halo. They ultimately got thrown out. Some elements were. Notably, quotes were brought back for Halo 3. Yeah. But in terms of story, the created story arc feels like it could be this, like, 343 trying to make the Cortana letters canon again. And if it can be executed right, there's some really cool shit they could do.
I mean, that's the problem with me, right? It's not the story itself, the baseline story. I have nothing against whatsoever because, like what I was going to say as well, it is literally the Cortana letters. That's the cool as fuck idea, bringing those back and making them canon. But the problem is that it focuses on Cortana, of whom had the best send off for a character in a long time, and B, just the way that it was handled in Halo 5, despite Cortana, was fucking garbage as well. Like, it wasn't handled well at all. Like the only significant AI that went to the creator, the only AI that we actually gave a shit about for more than one game was Cortana. And like I just said, she had to be the one AI that wasn't involved in it because, for obvious reasons, she had the best send off in a very long time at the end of Halo 4. So yeah, they're off to a really, really, really bad start. Could they make it better? Yeah, but it's never going to be as good as it could have been now that Cortana's at the center of it, at least for me.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that.
Do you think, like, part of the reason that it was off to a bad start, because I was thinking as I read through, like, Durandal, who's, like, the AI who goes crazy in the original Marathon game, do you think part of it is, like, the way Cortana was portrayed as, like, I mean, obviously, clearly she's supposed to be at some level of rampancy where she thinks she's capable of godhood and, like, taking care of the universe, but the way Halo 5 tries to portray her as completely sane, despite not being so.
Yeah, I'd agree that's also a problem, to be honest with you, because in the Cortana letters, like, she very clearly is going insane. She's taken on way too much information from an alien source that she's, like, never touched before. I mean, as of the Cortana letters, at least, she's never touched it before. Because
I know for Ian and stuff, like, obviously there's that, and, like, I definitely understand and respect it, that concept that, like, maybe part of the reason why they didn't want to touch that is because in Halo 4, the idea of her rampancy was supposed to draw obvious parallels towards dementia and actual insanity in human beings. And so maybe don't play on the trope that crazy people are bad guys. And that's why they tried to get away from, like, you know,
I can kind of understand that, but at the same time, it's like, if you're a bad guy, you kind of have something wrong with your head.
Yeah, exactly. You're crazy in one way or another if you're doing bad shit.
And I'm not going to say that everybody who's crazy is a bad guy or evil. That's insanity, really. That is true insanity.
Ironic.
But, you know, for Cortana to be wanting to suddenly take over the galaxy, there's something wrong with her. And you have to acknowledge that.
She's just doing something you don't agree with, Ian.
Like, I was thinking of
that you don't agree with.
I was thinking of, like, how interesting the idea and how, like, almost sad it would be if during the course of Halo 5's campaign, like, you know, as Chief is talking to her, you have those HUD glitches that you got from Halo 4 during her rampancy moments, where it's like, you know, hearing her truly believe what she's doing by waking up all these space owls. like she thinks she's doing a good thing, but seeing physically that she's glitching and freaking out and she doesn't even realize it. Like how sad that would be.
Dude, I was like, I was about to bet fucking like every single pound that I had on me on the fact that Halo 5 was going to have the Halo 3 Cortana moments again before the game came out. I was adamant it was going to have them.
Yeah,
because in the marketing,
that domain teaser, in Blue Team, when we first saw that, that's pretty much what it shouted.
Yeah,
it's like, it's like this improved Cortana movement.
Yeah, and also a super ironic thing, that one cutscene where on Blue Team where Chief falls down the cavern and he's in that massive like cavern, like that in all the trailers they always showed that like, oh, this is the first of many of these moments. This is going to be like some really weird.
That's what it hinted at.
But like that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
Like I had this like, dude, pre Halo 5, I had this like idea that okay, that's not Cortana, that's that's the domain projecting itself, and it's using Cortana because the Chief's familiar with that. Yeah, and then
domain
it was going to be like eventually you'd go on this hunt for Cortana, which that's why Chief goes AWOL, and then why Locke has to go after him,
which would lead to him finding like bias and bringing him back.
Maybe not even that, but just like. You'd eventually find out, no, this isn't Cortana, this is the domain, and it's reaching out because something's about to happen, and this is the only way it can express itself. But no.
Yeah,
evil AI.
Hence what they use in all the marketing, that term, like, there's been massive awakenings across the galaxy. Everyone was like, dude, what the fuck is that? What is that? Oh, it's big space.
It was the Guardians.
Yeah.
It was the Guardians, and it was underplayed. It was underplayed. Those specifically were underplayed. I think like Meridian gets it right pretty well towards the end, but then that's about it.
I liked the Guardians as a whole. I feel like their underwhelming like kind of execution in Halo 5 has soured a lot of people, but I liked the attempt to kind of make the Guardians a little bit more interesting in fleet battles with the added lore that like the faces wasn't the idea of the Forerunners. That was like the AI inside the Guardian doing that on its own, to the point where it started to freak out even the Forerunners, that every time they reset it, it would just make a dumb face on the Guardians again.
Wow.
I did not know that. That just sounds
like that's kind of creepy. It's like, imagine if you installed some AI into your like fighter planes on a battleship or something, and you all go to sleep in the brig, and you wake up the next morning and the AI has like given your fighter jet a creepy smile. Like that's kind of creepy, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
if you communicate that sort of thing in the game, it'd be much better. Like,
yeah, and if the faces don't look fucking ridiculous at the same time as well,
or if they just get rid. I'm hoping, because like, there's this. This is really. I wish this had been communicated in Halo 5. The Prometheans, the changes in the Prometheans were done by Cortana and the Warden. To like,
well, Promethean in general, that's been so misused weirdly.
When was that announced? I didn't know that.
It wasn't really announced anywhere. It's just one of those kind of little tidbits that Tara's originally picked it up and told me, and then I've since heard it in other places.
Because the only thing that I knew was that obviously from Escalation on O-Bomb, they saw the new updated knights that were stronger.
And those are supposed to be like somewhat like created or designed by Cortana and the Warden in some way.
Like it's no longer the AI of the human inside. Like it's just the shell of the knight operating on its own.
Yeah, and you know what? If they had communicated something like that anywhere in like even in the audio logs, that might have like at least helped Cortana's case. Like, hey, look at that! I freed these tortured souls from servitude. I mean, I'm still killing humans left and right and whatnot, but no, please, just hear me out.
Save this race and never did anything for me.
Good job.
That's a good point to end this on.
There we go. Perfect.
It's
just something you disagree with, guys.
It's just a big gray area.
Thank you so much, guys, for doing this. Hopefully we can do this again.
Thank you for having us.
It's been a fucking pleasure.
Yes, it has. I had a lot of fun.
And that's the way, that's the way the thing...
The cookie crumbles.
The cookie
that's
crumbles.
That's the way Cortana rules the galaxy.
and this is the way the world ends. Hey, that was a pretty good send.